Hey there, I'm Julie, Fei-Fan Balzer. I'm a painter, a printmaker, and a collage artist living and working outside of Boston. And I use a lot of stamps and stencils in my artwork, like the piece behind me, but it doesn't always show. So what does that mean it doesn't always show? What I mean, I guess, is that you don't see the full image, right? This stamp is on there a couple times, but you probably don't see actually like this. So how I use stamps and stencils in my work has changed over time. I used to just go ahead and like stamp the full image on my work and that was it. But nowadays I tend to use stamps and stencils a little more for texture. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to give you sort of a close-up tour of this painting, show you a couple places where I did that, and then I'm going to do a quick little demo for you so you can see how I end up incorporating these into my mixed media collage work. So let's do it. So once again, take a good look at that stamp. Now let's go over to the painting. Here you go. Can you see it? It's in a couple different places right on this bit of collage. Stamped several times actually. And here's another example. This is a stencil and right, it's on my collage paper, so it kind of gets incorporated. This is the reverse print of a stencil, which I actually used here. So this was gelatin printed, and for that other piece, I did it in black. And this is basically the image of the stencil. It's kind of the ghost print, I guess you could say, or what was underneath the stencil on the gelatin plate. And again, like this isn't just one piece of collage paper. Let's see if you can tell, but this is several different pieces of collage paper that are collaged together. And then I even drew some of the lines from the stencil. And, you know, there's some stenciling in her hair. Here you can see some of the stenciling that's been incorporated. You can see it again with, I mean, technically they're leaves and not actually stencils or masks, but they do the same thing that a stencil or a mask might do. And then I just incorporate these little bits and pieces to add lots of texture and interest into the piece, and so that it's a mixture of paint and collage and drawing and all sorts of stuff. So one of the first tips I'll give you is that I use a paper called deli paper. This is a sandwich wrapping paper. I also like wet strength tissue paper, but it's more expensive. And occasionally I'll use rice paper. And then I have this drawer, which I've just pulled out. I use the Alpha drawer system from the Container Store. And it's full of deli paper. There's that same stencil. So that's the same stencil from the dress, again, in a different color. And so in this drawer, some of these are stencils, some of them are just painted. Here you can see a place where it's just fragments of a stencil under here. So if I collage this on, I'm not going to get the whole stencil, but just bits of it. So I think this piece of paper is beautiful. I happen to love this stencil that I made, but you're never really going to see this whole stencil on something. It's unlikely. I might make this like a pattern in somebody's shirt or something else interesting, the texture of a vase or a teacup. And that's a really fun way for me to use it, I think, by cutting it up. In fact, let's make this into a teacup. So as a side note, this is the stencil that I used, and I did cut this using my cutting machine. So here's the paper, and I like to work just by using my scissors and cutting. If you were nervous, you could certainly do a template or something more careful. But I like to look at the paper and see sort of how it's speaking to me. Like this sort of naturally seems like a cup shape, the way that the design is on here. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut that out. And, if you want a little handle, you might want to think about that ahead of time. If not, one of the things that's so nice about collage is that it is super forgiving. So you could forget the handle and it would most likely be fine. So there's the beginning of it. And I'm going to curve this top a little bit, I think. That way I can do a kind of scoopy out in there. And then I'm going to cut inside here. And again, you could use a craft knife or smaller scissors, or, again, draw it out first. I just really enjoy the process of hand cutting. You could also, of course, like I said, collage this handle on later. It doesn't really need to be a single piece of paper. So the reason the deli paper is so important, or something else that's equally thin, is because it just collages really beautifully. It almost is a completely seamless effect. So let me show you how I do this. So this is my art journal. And I work out of order, so things are kind of all over in here. Okay, so maybe I want the teacup to go about here, and this would be the part of the teacup that then was full of something, and then it would maybe have like a plate that it was sitting on of some kind, and then maybe it's on, you know, a table, let's say, that's sitting kind of at an angle here, so it will go across this whole page like that. But you can see that I'm not gluing this collage down. I'm sort of blocking everything in. So what else could be on here? Maybe a little vase. Okay, so I'm going to take a minute, and then I'm going to paint this in, and then I'll show you how the teacup goes in. Okay, I am ready to collage. This is dry. That's really important. I'm going to use some gel medium. And you always want to match your gel medium to whatever it is that you're gluing down in terms of weight. So I'm gluing something thinner. So I'm using a thinner gel medium. Then I'm going to go ahead and slip this into place where I think it goes. Looks like my paint was a little bit wet because it's showing up, but it's fine. We roll with it. This is just an art journal. It's not a masterpiece. And I'm putting a layer of gel medium on top as well. Then I'm just going to wipe away where I think some of this light green has come down into the dark area. And so then I don't like collage to be like the very top layer. I like to make sure that I'm adding in some paint layers on top of there so that it doesn't look just sort of like stuck on to the finished piece. So I'm interested in this piece being very flat. I'm not adding any shadows. That's a personal style choice, but you could do it, you know what I mean, any way that you wanted. So if, you know, you can always poke at this more. I might add something else later, but you get the basic gist here, which is this is now collaged on here, and it is so seamless in person. I assume on camera as well, that like you can't tell that like this was collaged on top, this was the original, you know, paper that was on here. It just all looks like one piece, and you've got like a little bit of pattern. This was a little bit of pattern from some pattern paper. This was a little bit of pattern from some pattern paper, but that's basically, you know, you can imagine this as stenciled or stamped paper, just like this is stenciled paper. That's how I really incorporate little bits of collage, but not actually like stencil directly on it or stamp directly on it. At least that's what I'm doing these days. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this peek at my process. If you'd like more of this kind of content, I hope that you'll check out my monthly membership over at balzerdesigns.com. And of course, I hope you will subscribe to this YouTube channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, and as always, it really helps me if you share this video with someone else. Thanks so much. I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.